Canto 1, Chapter 18, Parikshit Curse by a Brahmana Boy, text number 33, word for word, Aho, Adharmaha, Palanam, Pivnam, Balibhujam, Ivam, Swamini, Agham, Yat, Dasanam, Dvarapanam, Shunam, Iva, Aho Adharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujam Iva, Swamin Yagham Yad Dasanam, Dvarapanam Shunam Iva, Aho Adharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujam Iva, Swamin Agham Yad Dasanam, Dvarapanam Shunam Iva, Aho Adharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujam Iva, Swamin Agham Yad Dasanam, Dvarapanam
Yagham Yadasanam Parapanam Sunamiva
Aho Adharma Palanam Ivnang Bali Bhujamiva Swamin Yagang Yatasanang Varapanang Shunamiva
Aho Dharma Palanam,
Aho Adharma
Pivnam Bali Bhujamiva,
Palanam Bali Bhujam Iva,
Swamin Yagam Yadasanam,
Swamin Yagam Yadasanam,
Dvarapanam Shunamiva,
Dwarapanam Shunam Iva, Aho Adharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujam, Swamin Yagam Yadasanam, Dwarapanam Shunam Iva. Aho Adharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujam Iva, Swamin Yagam Yadasanam, Dvarapanam Shunam Iva.
Aho Dharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujamiva, Swamin Yagham Yadasanam, Dvarapanam Shunamiva,
Aho Adharma Palanam, Pivnam Bali Bhujamiva, Swamin Yagam Yadasanam, Dwarapanam Shunamiva,
Parampasam.
Aho dharma palanam. Vivnam bali bujan niva. Amani yaknam yadashanam.
Nirandanasanam.
Tvarapanam sunamiva.
Nam Shunamiva.
To look at adharmaha, irreligion, palanam, of the rulers, tivnam, of one who is brought up, bali bujam, like the crows, iva, like, svamani, unto the master, agham, sin, yet, what is, dasanam, of the servants, dwarapanam, keeping watch at the door, shunam, of the dogs, iva, like. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Brahmana's son, Shringi, said, "Oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants." Purport. The Brahmanas are considered to be the head and brains of the social body, and the Kshatriyas are considered to be the arms of the social body. The arms are required to protect the body from all harm, but the arms must act according to the directions of the head and brain. That is a natural arrangement made by the Supreme Order. For it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that 4 social orders or castes, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, are set up according to quality and work done by them. Naturally, the son of a Brahmana has a good chance to become a Brahmana by the direction of his qualified father, as a son of a medical practitioner has a very good chance to become a qualified medical practitioner. So the caste system is quite scientific. The son must take advantage of the father's qualification and thus become a Brahmana or medical practitioner, and not otherwise. Without being qualified, one cannot become a Brahmana or medical practitioner, and that is the verdict of all scriptures and social orders. Herein, Shringi, a qualified son of a great Brahmana, attained the required Brahminical power both by birth and by training, but he was lacking in culture because he was an inexperienced boy. By the influence of Kali, the son of a Brahmana became puffed up with Brahminical power and thus wrongly compared Maharaj Parikshit to crows and watchdogs. The king is certainly the watchdog of the state in the sense that he keeps vigilant eyes over the border of the state for its protection and defense. But to address him as a watchdog is a sign of a less cultured boy. Thus, the downfall of the Brahminical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. The downfall of the Brahmana caste began in the age of Kali, and since Brahmanas are the heads of the social order, all other orders of society also began to deteriorate. This beginning of Brahminical deterioration was highly deplored by the father of Shringi, as we will find. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Translation repeated. The Brahmana's son Shringi said, "Oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants." This criticism or slander by Shringi reminds me of a slander that was spoken by what is her name? Shukracharya's daughter, Devyani, to Sharmishta, which is, Devyani was the daughter of a Brahmana, Shukracharya, and Sharmishta was a princess, was a daughter of a king, Kshatriya. So there was a quarrel that took place, as many of you know, in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam is to describe the pastime of Maharaj Yati, and this pastime was in this quarrel. Basically there was some quarrel took place, and so Devyani felt like she was wronged by Sharmishta, so she mentioned this point about, these Kshatriyas are supposed to be like servants of the higher castes, and so like this slander was made, and then there was some further altercation that happened. So we see that this pride by the higher castes can corrupt one's good character or qualities. Of course, pride is something that one has to be careful with at every step in their life, especially spiritual life. And even material life, when one is prideful, they fall, right? So even spiritual life, one has to be very careful of this pride and being of a higher caste, or being more intelligent, or being more powerful or more strong than somebody else can lead one to some downfall. And Krishna does not like pride at all, and we see this in the case of how he deals with the gopis when they so-called get proud, how he deals with Indra, who's proud of his position and he becomes humiliated. Lord Brahma's position becomes in question when he was prideful of Krishna, when he was prideful of his position. Daksha, one of the Prajapatis, gets destroyed by Lord Shiva because of his pride. He gets his head chopped off. Now he gets a go-ahead. So many instances in the Srimad Bhagavatam where pride is shown to be a pitfall in spiritual life. So one has to be very careful. And in this case, the age of Kali has begun, and this deterioration of the head of society has left the whole body in confusion and corruption. So it's like if to have the body function, the head and mind has to be working properly, right? So when the mind is working nicely and the head is, then the whole body can function. But when one has some disturbance in the nervous system, then the whole body gets affected. And so it's like the arms are trying to be the head, but they don't have actually the proper quality to become the head. So then they can't perform properly their own duties. So this is Krishna's system to set up Chaktivarnam Mayashastram Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, that the whole body is supposed to function together as a unit. Brahmanas as the head, the Kshatriyas as the arms, and the Vaishyas as the waist, torso, and the Shudras as the legs. So when all four castes are working together, then society can be very nice, or at least cooperative and in sync, can be peaceful. Of course, Krishna has to be in the center. But as the age of Kali has set in and has increased its corruption in all aspects, now we see that there's practically no Brahminical class. There's also practically no Kshatriya classes, mostly some Vaishyas type persons, Shudras. So now we see people are so motivated by lower natures. And the profit motive is something which is very much cherished, just making profit off people, exploiting people. I was just thinking about the business world yesterday, how basically, you can there may be good people in the business world, but more or less like they're always thinking of some profit, like what is my gain, what is my loss here? And I was thinking about how there might be some interactions of kindness, but behind that is this motivation, like, okay, how much is this going to help me? How much am I going to lose from this, right? There's always this calculating. So we have to be careful in spiritual life also to calculate things like, okay, if I do this for Krishna, then I'll get this in return, or I will be able to get this facility for sense gratification or something, or I'll give this devotee a gift, so then he or she will start being nice to me, or will give me a gift or glorify me or something, So the main motivation we want to have ultimately is just to do things to please Krishna and his devotees out of love and not expect anything in return. Not even to expect any respect for doing things for Krishna or his devotees, which is a pretty high quality to come to. So anyway, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned many times that he's trying to create a first class of men in society, the Brahminical class. People that are sober, following regular religious principles, chanting 60 rounds, following the four regular principles. And in this way, when one follows like this and lives a pure life, then they can give real knowledge to the other classes in society. So that's what is being done. So many devotees are becoming so much Brahminical and character and saintly, and they're able to give real advice to people. Advice and knowledge that actually is beneficial for this life and their eternal life. So one develops these qualities simply by following the process of Krishna consciousness. And a Brahminical platform is goodness, but the Vaishnava has qualities of a Brahmana naturally, like peacefulness, being religious, having knowledge, being realized, being sober-minded, peaceful, like this. Naturally, devotee develops these qualities. Therefore, we see Arjuna was displaying some, Brahminical qualities, saying, "No, I'm just going to go to the forest. I don't want to fight. I want to give this up." But Krishna was saying, "No, do your duty." So even if one is a kshatriya like Arjuna, he can still have these Brahminical qualities, but Krishna is saying, perform your duty as a kshatriya. For ultimately perform, my service. Do what I want you to do. So are there any comments or questions on these points? Yes, Bhakta Jiu.
So on this point of the calculating nature, where does that come from exactly? That's it. Thank you.
Well, Srila Prabhupada explains there's two very deep-rooted attachments in the conditioned soul. And one is to be the proprietor of all that they have, or everything, be the supreme proprietor, and then the other is to desire fruitive results. So it comes from that, this desire for material gain. And in the material world, due to the influence of mode of passion, we do things, passion and ignorance, we do things to get some result from it. You know, where we go to work, we work a certain amount of hours, we get a paycheck, it could even be like in the more mode of goodness, but still influenced by passion and ignorance, where we're giving charity or doing some charity work, but really we're in it for the happiness we feel from it or the prestige we get from doing that. So we're always calculating like that. What kind of material sense gratification am I going to get from this activity? And then we decide which activities to perform based off of what we're going to get from it. So this is a very deep-rooted attachment in the conditioned soul. And therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karmadinavritam anukuyena krishnano shilanam bhakti uttama. That first-class devotional service is free from that, from the desire for fruitive results. So it's a deep-rooted attachment, so one has to become purified by the process of bhakti yoga. And by serving Krishna, then naturally you'll become purified. So ultimately we'll come to the platform where we just want to do things to please Krishna. And we see that in the pastimes of the gopis, how they don't care at all about anything but that, what would give Krishna the highest pleasure. So they're even willing to, when Narada Muni asked them to give, that Krishna has a headache, he needs the dust of the feet of one of his devotees. And the gopis said, okay, whatever, I'll give you the dust of my feet. And Narada Muni said, well, don't you understand what's going to happen? You're going to go to hell for this. And they said, I don't care. As long as he'll please Krishna, he'll actually help Krishna. So this is completely unmotivated surrender to the Lord. So this is the highest thing to strive, highest motivation to strive for. But we might be, we might be motivated for certain things. So in our conditioned state, so we also have to dovetail those things. Like, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do a bunch of dishes for Krishna to get purified. So that's you could say that's like a calculation, but that's better than I'm going to do these dishes so that I could, people can know what a great dishwasher I am. Of course, maybe you have to use that motivation too in Krishna service to be purified of it. So the point is simply go on performing devotional service. You'll become free from all these things in time. And we'll hear from the pastimes of the Lord, and we'll gain an understanding what the proper consciousness is to serve Krishna, and gradually we'll get there. But go on serving Krishna, and you'll become purified more and more of all motivations till you come to this first-class devotional service. Any other? Yes, Rishi, there's something online?
There's a Zoom question.
Okay, who's it from?
Zoom question.
Who's it from?
Mercedes Mataji asks, what if someone expects you to immediately look at them as your well-wisher without showing you they're your well-wisher? If they're showing the opposite, like if they want the title of Prabhu without giving the action of being a Prabhu, am I supposed to automatically respect them and give them that title?
Sorry, it was hard to follow everything. That ultimately, yes, we want to give the utmost respect to everybody. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we give, we go up above and beyond to give, so much, like maybe you could say an unnecessary amount of respect if somebody's not acting in a respectful way, like towards you. So there's something to say about having respect for somebody, but not being so close, right? Being more of an acquaintance type of person. So then you don't have to interact so much, mostly just respect and friendly from a distance. And so in that way, one can respect, okay, this person is serving Krishna. So yes, in one sense, they are my Prabhu, but it's not like I have to go to them and all the time and ask them, how can I serve them? But just staying a distance and respecting that they're serving Krishna and they're trying their best and in their state that they're in, their conditioned state to serve the Lord. And we have to be respectful of what they are doing, what they're doing good. And then, if we don't appreciate how they act towards us for whatever reason, then we don't necessarily have to be so intimate with them, associate, and that's okay. It's not that a devotee has to be, intimately best friends with everybody, with every devotee. Yes, Maharaj?
One example is in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, there was one of his spiritual master's godbrothers, and he was a fault finder, and he liked to find faults in everyone. This is his nature. And so finally he came and he tried to find faults with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so he made up something, he saw some ants and he thought that, so he started a whole campaign that Lord Chaitanya is not really a fit sannyasi. He's eating sweets privately, you can tell by the ants, and he shouldn't be honored as a sannyasi. So he went on and on, fault finding. But whenever he would come, Lord Chaitanya would pay him obeisances and treat him with respect. In fact, whenever he would come and criticize, Lord Chaitanya would reduce his eating by one half. And then the devotees, disciples of Lord Chaitanya, were really upset, and they criticized this person. And but Lord Chaitanya, in his presence, he would always not fail to pay his obeisances and treat him as respectful. But actually, he didn't care about him. But he wanted to show the example that there is such a thing as etiquette, and the etiquette should be recognized, given some importance. For example, there's an injunction. When one sees a sannyasi, even if he's a Mayavadi sannyasi, he should pay his obeisances. So this was a little difficult for some of the devotees to understand, because we think Mayavadis are not understanding the philosophy, but still, the Vedas teach that should be given some respect. You're respecting the ashram of sannyas, not necessarily the person. So there's something for keeping up etiquette. At the same time, one shouldn't necessarily give them undue respect. The example of that one that came to Lord Chaitanya, it Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that he was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, but because of his fault-finding tendency, he even found fault with the spiritual master. And he criticized him at the last stage of his life because he was an impersonalist. So ultimately, everyone will get what they deserve. And they'll be recognized for really what they are. But there's no harm in showing respect, even for a person who's not on the highest platform. As Lord Chaitanya showed respect for the Mayavadis, because they were sannyasis, he took a humble position. There's no harm in being humble. Even if it's being humble to a person that is not as qualified as they think they're qualified. Still, it doesn't hurt me if I show some humility. I may think that they're unqualified or wrong or unintelligent, whatever it may be. But still, they have some position, and there's no harm to me if I show some outward respect. Just like someone may be working for the state, and he may not be doing his duty in the nicest way. Still, we have to show some respect. He's got a post. He's representing the state. Maybe he's not representing the state in the best possible way, according to my opinion. But still, we have to give him some respect. And there's no harm. Now, if someone feels he has to make it his duty to make everyone know, to bring it to everyone's attention, this person is unqualified in so many ways, he can do that if he wants to do that. But that's not our duty to do that. So we might be better off just giving someone the respect they demand and go on with our service so that we're not impeded. Otherwise, we can find faults in everyone. And Americans are famous around the world, internationally. They like to find faults. When you travel, you see the Americans, if someone doesn't do things the way they want, they'll tell them, make a big issue of it. And sometimes we make an issue of it in a way that's dangerous. I remember once I was traveling in the Middle East. So I was running some airline that was owned by a Middle Eastern country, Islamic country. And all of the people in this airport were dressed in those traditional gowns and the airline clerks, they were all from that same, and I was like this. And so the person who was representing the airline, he wanted to charge a lot of money for my suitcase, which I didn't feel was correct. So I decided to make an issue of it. I said, "Where's the manager?" As if I was in America. I forgot that I wasn't in America. And he said, "Oh, okay. You know what I can do? I can make it so you won't catch any planes for a few days. And I can make it that you have to pay a lot more for that." And he said, "Just stay over there now. Don't." So I began to think about the situation. And I realized that this was not the time to try to bring up an issue with this particular person who was representing the airline, because there was no way I was going to be able to do it in a short period of time. There was no one who was going to listen to me. And I was in an awkward position, very awkward. So I went over and I said, I apologize. I acted improperly. I'll do whatever you say. And then he softened up and everything was okay. So because I would have missed my flight, it would have charged money, stuck in the Middle East, it would have been a very difficult situation. So sometimes we have to be practical. We can show some respect to a person to accomplish our means, and our goal is to perform some service. So we might feel so strongly that, I just can't stand people to mistreat me, because they're going to mistreat others. We get into it. But is that really our duty to point out how they should all perform their duties nicely? Better we perform our own duty and tolerate whatever we have to tolerate for performing that service. If someone else he doesn't do his service properly, it's not necessarily our duty to correct them. So they'll be correct. Sometimes people would bring this up to Prabhupada. They would say, this devotee did this, and that. Prabhupada was quite aware of these things. And he generally preferred us to be patient and tolerant, and the practice of devotional service will bring about the desired change in the person's conduct and things. And Prabhupada would beg for their pardon. Persons who are complaining, he'd say, please have some patience with them and some kindness, because they're new, or they're trying, but it's not their culture, it's something new. So Prabhupada would always try to appeal to the nature of being patient and pardon them. Please pardon them. So if someone's trying to be a devotee, that's a great thing. He's trying to do some service. Even if he's not perfect at his service, another devotee likes to look at his good qualities. He may have some bad qualities. There are some devotees, for example, like Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. He didn't like to hear about any bad qualities of the devotees. He didn't like to hear any criticism. It's not that he was so blind that he couldn't see that they weren't always up to the highest standard, but he just didn't want to spend his time in that way. So there are some devotees who are like that. And for ourselves, we have to be careful that we don't get into the habit of finding fault in those who don't come up to my estimation of how they should do things, or I may be right on one level, but there's such a thing as you get into an argument about it, you try to win the argument, but you spent your time in something that maybe wasn't the best possible way to spend your time. So this is part of our maturing process, social service, learning how to go on with our service, even if others don't respect me. That's what Lord Chaitanya says in his Shikshastakam. Ready to offer all respects to others without expecting to be respected in return. He's giving his respect to others, and he's not being respected. So that may seem like an unfair system. But for the devotee to cultivate such humility, that's a good thing. That's good for his spiritual advancement. And he's setting a good example for others. Example is better than precept. Trying to tell someone that they're not acting humbly and they shouldn't claim to be Prabhu. That's true. We shouldn't. But the best way to teach that is to show it by example. There are so many examples of great devotees and how they were so respectful. They're so respectful to others, and they don't expect any respect from others. So, few thoughts.
Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.